Count her goats! The command exploded across Oloko village square. Nwanyeruwa froze, broom still in her hand. A widowed Igbo woman, 40 years old, medium dark skin, eyes full of fire. 1 year earlier, the British had taxed the men. Now this agent was counting her goats, her sheep, her household. She knew exactly what that meant. They were coming for the women next. So she stepped forward, locked eyes with the tax agent, and asked the question that would burn colonial courts to the ground. Was your widowed mother counted? The square fell silent. Then chaos erupted. Markets shut down. Chiefs ran for their lives. Soldiers opened fire. All because one widow refused to bow her head. But here's what schools never teach you. These women had no guns, no army, no political office. Yet they forced the British Empire to change its laws. How did singing women terrify colonial officers? Who was Nwanyeruwa really? And why does her anger still matter to Nigeria today? Stay till the end. The final outcome will shock you. If you love real Nigerian history, subscribe to Echoes of the Oloko TV now. The man grabbed her by the throat. The marketplace froze. Women stopped bargaining. Children stopped running. Even the goats seemed to fall silent. For a few terrifying seconds, Nwanyeruwa, an Igbo widow from Oloko in present-day Abia State, stared into the angry eyes of the man standing before her. His name was Mark Emerowa, and he had just asked a question that would shake the entire British Empire in Nigeria. Count your goats! His voice was firm. Count your sheep. Nwanyeruwa frowned. Mark pointed again. And count every person living in your household. Something inside her immediately felt wrong. This was not a simple census. This was not a harmless count. The British had already started taxing men. Now they wanted women too. Nwanyeruwa's heart pounded. Then she fired back a question that would soon become legendary. Was your widowed mother counted? The crowd gasped. Everyone knew what she meant. In Igbo tradition, women did not pay tax. Widows certainly did not. Mark stepped closer. His face darkened. The argument became louder. Then suddenly, he grabbed her by the neck. The widow stumbled backward. The market exploded into shouting. And at that exact moment, the British unknowingly lit a fire they would never be able to control. Now let's begin. Long before the confrontation in Oloko, tension had been building across eastern Nigeria. The year was 1929. Nigeria was under British colonial rule. Across the region lived millions of people from different ethnic backgrounds. The Igbo, the Ibibio, the Anang, the Efik, the Ijaw, the Ogoni, the Andoni. Each had unique traditions, but they shared one growing fear. The British were taking more control every year. One of the biggest changes involved the creation of warrant chiefs. These chiefs were not traditional rulers chosen by the people. They were local men selected by British administrators. Many communities did not trust them. Many believed they abused their power. And many women felt completely ignored by them. Then came another problem: taxes. In 1928, the British introduced direct taxation on men. People complained, but the policy survived. Now rumors spread through markets, villages, and riverside communities. Women feared they would be taxed next. For many women, this was terrifying. Most were traders. Many were farmers. Some were widows struggling to survive. The global economic crash of 1929 had already damaged trade. Prices were falling. Profits were shrinking. Food was becoming harder to afford. The last thing these women needed was another tax. Yet British officials kept collecting information, collecting names, collecting numbers, counting households, and every count looked suspicious. One evening, under the fading orange sky of Oloko, groups of women gathered. Their voices were low, their faces serious. What if they tax us? One woman asked. They promised they would not. Another replied. But can we trust them? Silence followed. No one answered. Because deep down, everyone already knew the answer. Then Nwanyeruwa arrived. She told them everything, every word, every insult, every moment. The women listened carefully. Their faces hardened. By the time she finished speaking, anger had replaced fear. One elderly woman stood up. If they can touch one of us, she pointed around the gathering, then they can touch all of us. The crowd erupted. For generations, Igbo women had possessed a powerful form of protest called sitting on a man. When a man abused power, women gathered around him. They sang, they danced, they mocked his actions publicly. They followed him everywhere. They refused to let him rest. It was social pressure transformed into political power. Now the women decided to use that weapon again. But this time, their target was not one man. Their target was an entire colonial system. The message spread rapidly, not by newspapers, not by radio, but by palm leaves. Women carried palm leaves from village to village. Each leaf carried the same warning. Come to Oloko. Come now. Something terrible is coming. And the response shocked everyone. Women began arriving from every direction. Some walked for hours. Others walked for days. Mothers carried babies. Grandmothers carried walking sticks. Young traders left their stalls. Farmers abandoned their fields. The roads filled with determined faces. Thousands. Then thousands more. Soon, nearly 10,000 women stood together. 10,000. The British never expected anything like it. The warrant chief at the center of the controversy was Chief Okugo. When he looked outside and saw the crowd gathering, his stomach dropped. The singing started first, then the dancing, then the chanting. Resign! 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 Chief Okugo tried to remain calm, but the crowd kept growing. Women surrounded his office. Women surrounded his home. Women followed his every movement. For the first time, the powerful chief felt powerless. Meanwhile, 3 remarkable women emerged as leaders: Ogoni, Nwanyeruwa, and Nwugo. History would remember them as the Oloko trio. They were fearless, they were intelligent, and most importantly, they knew how to control a crowd. Whenever tempers rose, they calmed people down. Whenever panic spread, they restored order. Again and again, they prevented violence because their goal was justice, not destruction. Then came the twist nobody expected. British officials began receiving reports from neighboring districts. The movement was spreading fast, very fast. What started in Oloko was no longer an Igbo protest. Ibibio women joined, Anang women joined, Ijaw women joined, Ogoni women joined, Andoni women joined, Efik women joined. Suddenly, 6 ethnic groups were standing shoulder to shoulder, not fighting each other, fighting injustice together. For the British administration, this was alarming. Colonial officers exchanged worried messages. One officer reportedly remarked, "If this continues, we may lose control of the entire region." And that fear was about to become reality, because the women were preparing their next move, a move that would bring the colonial government to its knees. And before anyone realized it, the first shots would be fired, but not by the women, not by the chiefs, by the very people who claimed they had come to maintain order. And when the smoke cleared, blood would stain the ground, lives would be lost, and the women's war would enter its most dangerous chapter. For the first time, women from 6 major ethnic groups found themselves fighting the same battle. Different languages, different customs, different villages, yet the same grievance, the same anger, the same determination. Ogoni, Nwanyeruwa, and Nwugo, the Oloko trio. Unlike many leaders, they understood something important. Anger could start a movement, but discipline would keep it alive. Whenever tempers flared, they stepped in. Whenever arguments broke out, they calmed people down. Whenever young protesters talked about attacking buildings, they discouraged it. "We are here for justice," Ogoni reminded them. "Not revenge." Nwugo nodded. "If we lose control, the British will use it against us." For a while, their strategy worked. The movement remained peaceful. In market squares, conversations became impossible to ignore.
Today they count our
property. What will they take tomorrow? How long do we remain silent? The movement became larger than taxation. It became a fight against exclusion, a fight against leaders who ignored women, a fight against the colonial system many believed no longer respected local traditions. Soon, district officers began receiving alarming reports. One officer unfolded a document and stared at it. The numbers did not make sense. Thousands of women gathering, thousands more joining, meetings happening daily, protests appearing in multiple locations. The officer rubbed his forehead. This is becoming dangerous. Another official disagreed. They are only women. That sentence would become one of the greatest mistakes the colonial administration ever made, because the officials still did not understand what they were facing. These women were traders, they were farmers, they were mothers, they were organizers, and they knew how to mobilize communities faster than the government could react. As weeks passed, more warrant chiefs became targets of the protests. Women sat outside their compounds. Women sang through the night. Women followed them through markets. Women publicly listed every complaint against them. The pressure became unbearable. Several warrant chiefs began resigning. Others fled. Some locked themselves indoors. The women celebrated every victory. But then the movement reached a dangerous turning point. One afternoon, news spread through the crowd. A road blockade had been established by protesters. The women wanted to prevent government officials from moving freely. It was a powerful statement, and it attracted attention. Soon police officers arrived. Tension filled the air. The women stood their ground. The officers demanded they disperse. Nobody moved. The officers repeated the order. Still, nobody moved. An elderly woman stepped forward. "We are not criminals," another woman shouted. "We only want justice." The standoff continued. Minutes felt like hours. Then panic suddenly erupted. Shots rang out. Women screamed. People ran. Dust filled the air. When the confusion finally settled, 2 women lay dead. Dead. The crowd stared in disbelief. Nobody had expected this. Nobody. The news spread across eastern Nigeria like wildfire. 2 women had been killed. Mothers, daughters, members of the movement. For many protesters, everything changed in that moment. The deaths transformed anger into outrage. The Oloko trio rushed to calm the situation. Igbo climbed onto a platform. "Sisters, listen to me." The crowd continued shouting. Nwanyeruwa raised her hand. "We must stay united." But grief was overpowering reason. Women cried openly. Others demanded action. The mood was no longer the same. The deaths became a rallying cry. And as word spread to Igbo, Ibibio, Efik, Ijaw, Ogoni, and Andoni communities, even more women joined the revolt. What had begun as a dispute involving one widow was becoming a regional uprising. Then came another shocking twist. Women started arriving from distant communities carrying requests. They wanted written statements. They wanted clear demands. They wanted a message that everyone could repeat. Many of them approached Nwanyeruwa directly. "What exactly are we fighting for?" one woman asked. Nwanyeruwa thought carefully. Then she delivered words that would become famous throughout the movement. Women will not pay tax till the world ends. The crowd roared. She continued. "And the chiefs must no longer rule over us." The reaction was explosive. For many women, those words perfectly captured their frustration. The message spread rapidly. Soon, thousands were repeating it. Meanwhile, British officials were growing increasingly nervous. Reports arrived daily. More demonstrations, more crowds, more disruptions, more resistance. The administration expected the movement to fade. Instead, it was growing stronger. And then something happened that shocked everyone. The protests began transforming into open rebellion. Native courts were attacked. Government buildings became targets. The authority of the colonial administration itself was being challenged. For the British, this was no longer a protest. It was becoming a crisis. And for the women, the struggle was entering its most dangerous phase, because the government had finally made a decision. If persuasion failed, they would use force, and the soldiers were already on their way. The soldiers arrived before dawn. Their boots struck the earth with a rhythm that sent fear through entire communities. Word spread quickly. "The army's here. The British have sent troops. They are coming." Across Owerri province and Calabar province, women gathered in groups and discussed what to do next. Some were afraid, others were furious. Many refused to back down. After everything they had sacrificed, surrender felt impossible. The movement had already grown beyond Oloko. It had spread across more than 6,000 square miles. From Igbo communities in Bende, Ngwa, Owerri, and Umuahia, to Ibibio settlements, to Efik trading towns, to Ijaw river communities, to Ogoni villages, to Andoni settlements. The Women's War had become one of the largest anti-colonial protests West Africa had ever seen. Yet despite its size, the women still carried no organized weapons. Their greatest weapon remained unity. But unity was now facing rifles. One morning, a crowd of women gathered near a native court. They sang, they danced, they demanded accountability. Some carried palm leaves, others carried nothing at all. Then soldiers appeared. The singing slowly faded. The atmosphere changed instantly. An officer stepped forward. Disperse immediately. Nobody moved. The women stared back. Another warning came. Leave now. Still, nobody moved. An elderly woman stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but her courage did not. This land belongs to our people. A younger woman beside her shouted, "We will not be taxed." Another voice joined. "We want justice." Then another, and another. Soon, hundreds of voices merged into one. The officer's face hardened. Moments later, gunfire shattered the air. Women screamed. People ran. Chaos exploded everywhere. Some fell. Others tried to help the wounded. Mothers searched desperately for daughters. Sisters searched desperately for sisters. When the shooting finally stopped, the ground was covered with grief. The women had come carrying songs. They were met with bullets. As news spread, sorrow swept across eastern Nigeria. Entire communities mourned. Families cried. Villages held discussions late into the night. Many could not believe what had happened. But something unexpected emerged from the tragedy. The deaths did not destroy the movement. They made it impossible to ignore. Every woman who died became a symbol. Every funeral became a reminder. Every tear became fuel. The British administration had hoped force would end the resistance. Instead, the resistance had become history. By the time order was eventually restored, approximately 55 women had been killed. Many more had been wounded. The Women's War was gradually suppressed. Troops remained active throughout late December 1929. Patrols continued into January 1930. On paper, the colonial government claimed victory. But in reality, something remarkable had happened. The women had forced the empire to listen. And that was the plot twist nobody expected. The British had guns. The women had no political office. The British had courts. The women had songs. The British had soldiers. The women had determination. Yet somehow, the women succeeded where many believed they would fail. The colonial government could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. Questions began pouring in. Why had thousands of women united? Why had the movement spread so rapidly? Why were entire communities rejecting the warrant chief system? The government had no choice. An investigation was ordered. In 1930, the Aba Commission of Inquiry was established. Witnesses came forward, hundreds of them. Women spoke, men spoke, colonial officials spoke. Stories were told, complaints were documented. Truths that had been ignored for years finally entered official records. Among those who spoke was Mary Okezi. Unlike many others, she submitted a formal memo detailing the grievances of women. She would later become a major leader and found the Nwa Women's Association. Other notable women, such as Mary of Ogundem and Ihejilemebi Ibi, also became remembered as important figures in the struggle. Then came the moment that changed everything. The findings of the inquiry led to major reforms. The hated warrant chief system was abolished. The very system the women had challenged was dismantled. For years, many thought such a thing was impossible, yet it happened. Even more astonishing was what came next. For the first time, women were appointed to the native court system. The same women who had been pushed aside were now being brought into governance. The same voices that had been ignored were finally being heard. The same people who were told to remain silent had changed the future, and the impact did not end there. The Women's War inspired future generations. Tax protests followed. Women's movements became stronger. Political awareness grew. Many historians today view the Women's War as one of the earliest sparks of mass nationalism in Nigeria, a movement born from ordinary women, not generals, not kings, not wealthy politicians, Ordinary women. Women who refuse to accept injustice. Women who refuse to surrender their dignity. Women who proved that courage is not measured by weapons. It is measured by conviction. Nearly a century later, the names of Nwanyeruwa, Ikonia, Nwanedia, Nwugo, Mary Okezi, Mary of Ogundem, and many others continue to echo through Nigerian history. Because when history remembers the Women's War, it remembers something larger than a protest. It remembers a lesson. When ordinary people unite for a just cause, even the most powerful systems can be forced to change. And that brings us to the question for today's audience. If you were one of those women in 1929, would you have joined the protest, or would fear have kept you at home? Tell us in the comments. If this story inspired you, please like this video so more people can discover this incredible chapter of Nigerian history. Subscribe to Echoes of the Oloko TV for more powerful stories from Nigeria, Black history, and African history that deserve to be remembered. And share this video with someone who believes that one person cannot change history. Because Nwanyeruwa was only one widow, yet her courage awakened thousands. And together, they changed the nation forever. Nearly a century later, the Women's War of 1929 still speaks to us today. And its lessons may be more important now than ever before. The moral lessons are 1. One voice can start a movement. 2. Unity is stronger than fear. 3. Women have always been agents of change. 4. Peaceful resistance can shake powerful systems. 5. Leadership is about courage, not titles. 6. Sacrifice often comes before victory. 7. History belongs to those who refuse to remain silent. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story from Africa's forgotten past.